Thank you so much to everyone who has taken the time to comment and share your feedback on my stories. Your support means the world to me. Please keep liking, commenting, and subscribing. It helps me know what you enjoy and motivates me to create more content. Stay tuned for more stories coming your way soon. Sarah stared at the empty baby formula can, tears streaming down her face as her 6-month-old daughter cried in the background. The electricity had been shut off 3 days ago, and the apartment was freezing cold in the January night. She wrapped her baby in another blanket, her hands shaking from both cold and fear. Tomorrow was payday, but it wouldn't be enough. It never was. Not since she lost her second job when the restaurant closed down. "It's okay, Lily," she whispered, even though nothing was okay. She hadn't eaten in 2 days, saving the last bit of food for her daughter. The refrigerator stood empty and silent. The cabinets contained only a single packet of crackers. The baby's cries grew louder, hungrier, more desperate. Sarah picked up her phone, the screen cracked from when she dropped it rushing to catch the bus last week. She scrolled through her contacts, pride battling with desperation. Her mother was gone. Her sister hadn't spoken to her in years. Her friends? What friends? Working 2 jobs and raising a baby alone didn't leave time for friends. There was only one person who might help. Thomas, her old supervisor from the hospital where she'd worked as a cleaner before Lily was born. He'd always been kind to her, slipping her extra shifts when she needed them. Once he'd even given her a ride home during a snowstorm. He'd been promoted last year and she'd heard he was doing well. Maybe he would loan her just enough for formula and to keep the heat on until her check came through. With trembling fingers, she typed a message. "Hi Thomas, I'm sorry to bother you. This is Sarah from hospital cleaning. I'm in a terrible spot. My electricity is off and I have no formula for my baby. I get paid tomorrow but need $75 to get through tonight. I promise I'll pay you back Friday. I wouldn't ask if I wasn't desperate." She hit send, then closed her eyes, the shame washing over her. Begging. She was begging now. 3 minutes later, her phone pinged. "I think you have the wrong number. There's no Thomas here." Sarah's heart sank. She'd misdialed. Of course she had. Nothing could go right today. She quickly typed back. "I'm so sorry to bother you. Wrong number." She set the phone down, picked up her crying daughter, and began pacing the dark apartment, bouncing the baby gently, trying to soothe her hunger with motion. The phone pinged again. Probably the stranger telling her off for the mistake. She ignored it at first, but after the third ping she checked the screen. "Are you and your baby safe?" The question surprised her. She typed back with one hand, the other still holding Lily. "Yes, just hungry and cold." Another ping. "What formula does your baby need? What's your address?" Sarah hesitated. Giving her address to a complete stranger seemed dangerous. But what did she have to lose? Nothing worth stealing. And maybe, just maybe, "Why do you want to know?" The reply came quickly. "I want to help. I can send formula and pay your electric bill. No strings attached." Sarah stared at the message in disbelief. This had to be a joke. Or something worse. Nobody just offered help like that to strangers. Not in her experience. "Who is this?" she typed. "Someone who can help. My name is James. I promise I'm not a creep. I just want to make sure your baby has food tonight." Sarah looked at her crying daughter, then back at the phone. Desperation won. She sent her address and the formula brand. Within minutes, her phone pinged with confirmation of an order from an all-night grocery delivery service. Formula, groceries, diapers, and baby wipes would arrive in 1 hour. Another message showed a receipt for her electric bill being paid in full, including the past due amount. Sarah sank to the floor, clutching her phone and her baby, sobbing now with relief rather than despair. She didn't know who this James was or why he was helping her. But tonight her baby would eat. And tomorrow she would figure out how to thank him, and how to pay him back. An hour later, as she fed Lily the fresh formula, Sarah stared at the bags of groceries on her counter. The lights were on. The heat was running. And her phone showed one unread message. "Is everything okay now?" She typed back with one hand, "Yes. Thank you. I don't know how I'll ever repay you." The response came immediately, "No need. Just take care of your little one. Good night, Sarah." Sarah didn't know it yet, but that wrongly sent text message would change her life forever. James Parker sat in his penthouse office, staring at his phone long after sending his last message to the stranger named Sarah. Outside his floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights twinkled like stars fallen to earth. He should be reviewing the quarterly reports for his tech company, but instead he kept thinking about the desperate mother who had accidentally texted him. He was no stranger to helping people. His charitable foundation gave away millions each year. But those were carefully vetted causes, managed by a team of professionals. This was different. This was direct. Real. A woman and her hungry baby just across town. James ran his hand through his short dark hair and stood up, walking to the window. At 41 he had more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. His company had revolutionized renewable energy storage, making him one of the richest men in the country. He had the penthouse, the vacation homes, the private jet. What he didn't have was anyone to share it with. His assistant, Elena, knocked and entered without waiting for a response as usual. "You missed the call with Tokyo," she said, placing another stack of papers on his already cluttered desk. "Reschedule it," James replied, still looking out at the city. "Again? That's the third time. Mr. Tanaka will not be pleased." James turned to face her. "Elena, do you ever wonder about the people out there? In all those buildings? All those lives we know nothing about?" Elena raised an eyebrow. In 15 years as his assistant, she'd seen all his moods. "Is everything all right, James?" He picked up his phone. "I just got a text from a woman named Sarah. Wrong number. She was trying to reach someone named Thomas to borrow money for baby formula." "And you sent her money," Elena stated, knowing him too well to even phrase it as a question. "I paid her electric bill and sent groceries. She has a baby, Elena." They were hungry and cold. Elena's expression softened. "That was kind of you. But be careful. There are plenty of scammers out there who would take advantage of your generosity." James nodded, but he couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah's text had been genuine. The desperation had felt real. And something about her brief messages had touched him in a way he couldn't explain. "I think I'm going to check on her tomorrow," he said. Elena's eyes widened. "You're not serious." "I am, actually. I want to make sure she and the baby are all right." "James, you can't just show up at a stranger's home because she accidentally texted you once." "I'm not going to just show up. I'll text her first, offer to bring some more supplies." Elena sighed. "This is highly irregular even for you. At least let me send someone from the foundation to check on her first." James shook his head. "No. This isn't foundation business. This is personal." "That's what concerns me," Elena muttered. "You don't know anything about this woman. I know she was desperate enough to ask for help but proud enough to promise to pay it back. I know she's a mother who puts her child first. And I know she's struggling." James looked back out at the city. "That's enough for now." Elena knew that tone. When James Parker made up his mind, there was no changing it. She nodded and left the office, making a mental note to quietly run a background check on this Sarah, anyway. James might be a brilliant businessman, but his soft heart sometimes overrode his common sense. After Elena left, James sat back at his desk and picked up his phone again. He found himself scrolling back through the brief exchange with Sarah. It had been years since anything had truly captured his attention like this. His days blurred together in an endless stream of meetings, decisions, and obligations. But something about that accidental text had awakened a feeling he'd almost forgotten. Curiosity. Concern. Connection. James knew it was foolish. Sarah was a stranger who had accidentally messaged him in a moment of desperation. She hadn't asked for anything beyond the initial request meant for someone else. She'd been grateful, yes, but also wary. As she should be. And yet, he couldn't stop thinking about her and her baby. Couldn't stop wondering about their story. Couldn't stop feeling like maybe, just maybe, that wrong number wasn't a mistake at all but something else. Something like fate. James laughed at himself. Fate? Really? He was a scientist by training, a businessman by success. He didn't believe in fate or destiny or any of that nonsense. But as he finally turned back to his quarterly reports, a small part of him wondered if perhaps he was wrong about that too. Sarah woke with a start, momentarily confused by the humming of the refrigerator and the soft glow of the nightlight in the corner. Then she remembered the electricity was back on. The mysterious stranger named James had paid her bill. Had sent food for her and formula for Lily. She glanced at the clock, 5:30 a.m. Lily would be awake soon, wanting her morning bottle. For the first time in weeks, Sarah didn't feel that immediate punch of anxiety upon waking. Today she had formula. Today she had food. Today she could turn on the lights and feel the blessed heat flowing through the vents. She slipped out of bed and padded to the kitchen, opening the refrigerator door just to see the food inside. Milk, eggs, cheese, vegetables, fruit, simple things that had become luxuries. The delivery had included enough groceries to last at least a week. Far more than the $75 she had asked to borrow from Thomas. Thomas? She needed to apologize for bothering him with her problems. But first, coffee. Real coffee with real milk. Another luxury. As the coffee brewed, Sarah checked her phone. There was a message from her actual supervisor at the hospital where she now worked nights as a cleaner. "Can you come in early today?" Jenna called out sick. Sarah typed back immediately, "Yes, no problem." Extra hours meant extra money. And with the electric bill paid, her paycheck could go toward rent and catching up on other bills. She scrolled further and saw a message from the wrong number from James, sent just after she'd fallen asleep last night. "I hope you and your baby are resting well. If you need anything else, please don't hesitate to ask." Sarah bit her lip, unsure how to respond. The help had been a blessing, but she was uncomfortable being indebted to a complete stranger. She needed to pay him back somehow. "Good morning," she typed. "I can't thank you enough for your help last night. You saved us. I get paid today and want to arrange to pay you back. Maybe not all at once, but in installments." She hit send, then went to prepare a bottle for Lily, who was beginning to stir in her crib. By the time she'd changed the baby's diaper and settled into the rocking chair to feed her, the phone had pinged with a reply. "Good morning, Sarah. I'm glad I could help, but please don't worry about paying me back. Consider it a gift. How are you and your little one doing today?" Sarah stared at the message. Who was this man? In her experience, nothing came without strings attached. Yet here was this stranger, asking for nothing in return for his generosity. "We're much better, thanks to you," she replied. "But I can't just accept such a large gift from someone I don't even know. It doesn't feel right." Lily finished her bottle and Sarah burped her, then set her in the bouncy seat while she showered quickly. When she came back, there was another message waiting. "I understand. How about this? If you truly want to repay me, you can help someone else when you're in a position to do so. Pass it forward." Sarah smiled despite herself. It was a nice thought, but it didn't solve her immediate discomfort. "That's a lovely idea and I will do that," she typed. "But I still feel I should repay you directly. You don't even know me. I could be anyone." The reply came as she was getting dressed for work. "True. And I could be anyone too. If it makes you more comfortable, maybe we could meet somewhere public. You could tell me more about yourself and your baby, and I could explain why I wanted to help." Sarah froze, one arm in her uniform shirt. Meet him? In person? The kindness of his actions warred with the warnings that had been drilled into her since childhood. Don't talk to strangers. Don't trust too easily. Nothing comes for free. But then again, she reasoned, meeting in a public place would be safe enough. And she did owe him at least a proper thank you. "I could meet for coffee tomorrow," she wrote. "I work nights, so morning would be best. There's a cafe called Morning Brew on 5th Street. "I know it," came the quick reply. "How about 9 a.m.? And please bring your little one if you'd like. No pressure either way." Sarah hesitated before responding. 9 a.m. works. And yes, Lily will be with me. She goes everywhere I go. I look forward to meeting you both. Enjoy your day, Sarah." As she finished getting ready for work, Sarah wondered if she was making a mistake. She knew nothing about this man except that he had money and had been kind to her. That wasn't much to go on. She glanced at Lily, now happily playing with her feet in the bouncy seat. "What do you think, sweetie? Should we trust the man who bought your formula?" Lily gurgled and smiled, showing her two tiny bottom teeth. "Yeah, that's what I thought too," Sarah said, tickling her daughter's tummy. "We'll be careful. But someone who makes sure a baby isn't hungry can't be all bad, right?" She finished getting ready, packed Lily's diaper bag, and bundled her daughter up against the January cold. As she locked her apartment door, Sarah realized she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. It was a dangerous feeling. Hope had let her down before. But as she carried Lily to the bus stop, she allowed herself to wonder if perhaps this time might be different. Morning Brew was busy when Sarah arrived, 5 minutes before 9. She'd taken extra care with her appearance today, though her options were limited. Her dark hair was neatly braided, and she wore her one good pair of jeans with a clean sweater. Lily was dressed in her cutest outfit, a little pink jumpsuit with ears on the hood that made her look like a tiny bear. Sarah found a table in the corner where she could see the door and settled Lily in her carrier. She'd saved enough money for one coffee, but she ordered water instead, not knowing how long they would stay or if James would expect her to pay for her own drink. At precisely 9 o'clock, the cafe door opened and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The man who entered was not at all what she had expected. Somehow she'd pictured someone older with gray hair and a grandfatherly smile. This man was tall and fit, maybe early 40s, wearing jeans and a simple black coat that somehow still looked expensive. His dark hair was neatly cut, and when he scanned the room, his eyes were a warm brown behind black-framed glasses. Their eyes met and he smiled, walking directly to her table. There was no uncertainty in his movement. Somehow he'd known exactly who she was. "Sarah?" he asked, his voice deep and pleasant. She nodded, suddenly nervous. "James? That's me." He gestured to the empty chair across from her. "May I join you?" "Please," she said, finding her voice. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for meeting me," he replied, settling into the chair. His gaze shifted to the baby carrier, and his expression softened. "And this must be Lily." Sarah nodded, a reflexive protective feeling making her shift slightly closer to her daughter. "Yes, this is my daughter." James seemed to sense her wariness. "She's beautiful," he said simply, then turned toward the counter. "Can I get you something to drink? Coffee? Tea?" "I'm fine with water, thank you," Sarah replied automatically. James studied her for a moment, then smiled. "I'm going to get a coffee for myself. Are you sure I can't tempt you with something? Their caramel latte is excellent." The gentleness in his tone broke through her reflexive refusal. "A caramel latte does sound nice," she admitted. "One caramel latte coming up. Any breakfast? The blueberry muffins here are worth every calorie." Sarah started to refuse again, then stopped herself. Pride had its place, but this man had already paid her electric bill and bought her groceries. A muffin was hardly worth the fuss of refusing. "A blueberry muffin would be lovely," she said. James nodded and went to the counter. Sarah took the opportunity to study him as he ordered. Everything about him spoke of money, from his perfectly fitting clothes to his effortless confidence. Yet there was nothing showy or arrogant in his manner. He chatted easily with the barista, making her laugh about something. When he returned to the table with their drinks and food, Sarah noticed he'd bought extra muffins. "I got a few for later," he explained, following her gaze. "In case Lily gets hungry or you want something for lunch." Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes and blinked them away quickly. It was such a small kindness, but somehow it affected her more than the bigger help he'd provided. The thoughtfulness of it. "Thank you," she said, taking a sip of her latte to hide the emotion in her voice. "You're welcome." James settled back in his chair. "So, Sarah, tell me about yourself." Sarah hesitated, unsure where to begin or how much to share. "There's not much to tell. I'm a single mom. I work nights cleaning at Memorial Hospital. During the day, I take online classes when Lily naps." "What are you studying?" James asked, seeming genuinely interested. "Nursing," Sarah replied. "I've always wanted to be a nurse. But it's slow going one class at a time." "That's impressive," James said. "Working nights, raising a baby alone, and still pursuing your education." Sarah shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "I do what I have to do. Lily deserves a good life." "And what about you? What do you deserve?" The question startled her. No one had asked her something like that in a long time. Maybe ever. I don't know," she answered honestly. "I don't really think about that." James nodded, as if her answer told him something important. "And Lily's father? Is he in the picture?" Sarah tensed. "No. He left when I told him I was pregnant." "His loss," James said simply, with no judgment in his tone. Lily chose that moment to wake up, making small fussing noises that Sarah knew would soon turn to cries if she didn't act quickly. She reached for the diaper bag, but James was already standing. "May I hold her while you get what you need?" he asked. Sarah hesitated only briefly before nodding. James carefully lifted Lily from her carrier, supporting her head with practiced ease. Sarah watched in surprise as he gently bounced the baby, speaking to her in soft tones. "Hello there, Miss Lily. Did you have a good nap? Your mom and I are just having a chat." "Yes, we are." Lily stared up at him with wide eyes, then broke into a gummy smile that made Sarah's heart turn over. Her daughter was not usually so quick to warm up to strangers. "You're good with babies," Sarah observed as she prepared a bottle. James smiled ruefully. "I have nieces and nephews. They've taught me a thing or two." When the bottle was ready, he handed Lily back to Sarah, who settled into feeding her daughter. "Now it's your turn," Sarah said. "Tell me about yourself. And why you helped us." James took a sip of his coffee. "I'm the CEO of Parker Renewable Technologies. We develop and manufacture energy storage solutions, batteries, essentially, but more efficient and environmentally friendly than traditional ones." Sarah stared at him. Parker Renewable Technologies was a massive company. She'd seen their logo on buildings downtown. You're that James Parker?" He nodded, looking slightly embarrassed. "Guilty as charged. But you're?" Sarah couldn't find the words. "Rich?" James supplied with a small smile. "Yes, I am." Very. Which is why helping you with groceries and an electric bill was not a hardship for me. But why? Sarah persisted. You must get people asking for money all the time. I do, James agreed. But you weren't asking me. You were asking someone named Thomas, who you obviously knew and trusted enough to reach out to when you were in trouble. And you promised to pay him back. That told me a lot about your character. Sarah felt her cheeks warm. Still, most people would have just ignored a wrong number text. James was quiet for a moment, watching as Lily drank her formula. Can I tell you something, Sarah? She nodded. The night you texted me, I was sitting alone in my office looking out at the city and feeling disconnected from everything and everyone. I have more money than I'll ever need, but sometimes I wonder what it's all for. And then your message came through and suddenly I had a purpose. A simple, direct way to help someone. Felt real. More real than anything that had happened to me in a long time. His honesty took Sarah by surprise. This wasn't what she'd expected at all. So you see, James continued, you actually helped me too. You reminded me that there are real people out there with real problems that I can actually help solve. Not just by writing checks to foundations but by direct human connection. Sarah didn't know what to say to that. The idea that she had somehow helped this billionaire seemed absurd. And yet, the sincerity in his eyes was unmistakable. Lily finished her bottle, and Sarah lifted her to her shoulder to burp her, using the moment to gather her thoughts. I still want to pay you back, she said finally. Maybe not with money right away but somehow. James considered this. How about this, have dinner with me sometime? Just as friends, he added quickly, seeing her expression. I'd like to hear more about your nursing studies. Maybe I can help with that too. Sarah's pride bristled instinctively, but she forced herself to consider his offer objectively. James Parker could probably open doors for her career that would otherwise remain firmly closed. And he seemed genuinely kind, with no ulterior motives she could detect. Just as friends, she clarified. Absolutely, James confirmed. No pressure, no expectations. Sarah looked down at Lily, now contentedly playing with a strand of her mother's hair. Then she looked back at James, this strange, kind billionaire who had entered their lives through a simple wrong number. Okay, she said. Dinner as friends. James smiled, and Sarah was struck by how it transformed his face from merely handsome to something much more appealing. Great, he said. It's a date. I mean, not a date. A friend date. His sudden awkwardness made Sarah laugh, easing the tension she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Maybe, just maybe, this bizarre situation wasn't as dangerous as she'd feared. Maybe it was the beginning of something good. 3 weeks after their first meeting at the cafe, Sarah found herself becoming more comfortable with James's presence in her life. They had shared 2 more friend dates, once for dinner at a casual restaurant where he hadn't batted an eye when she'd brought Lily along, and once for a walk in the park on Sarah's day off. Both times, James had been unfailingly kind, interested in her life and thoughts, and respectful of her boundaries. Tonight, they were having dinner at her apartment, her suggestion, despite her initial embarrassment about the shabby one-bedroom unit. James had accepted without hesitation, bringing a bag of groceries despite her protests that she wanted to cook for him. It's just pasta, Sarah said, stirring the simple sauce she'd made. It smells amazing, James replied, sitting on the floor of the living room where he was building a tower of blocks for Lily to knock down. Each time the blocks tumbled, Lily would giggle and clap her hands, and James would patiently rebuild the tower. Sarah watched them from the kitchen. Lily had taken to James immediately, which both warmed and worried Sarah's heart. She didn't want her daughter getting attached to someone who might not stay in their lives. But watching them play together, it was hard to maintain that worry. James seemed genuinely delighted by Lily's company, never checking his phone or appearing bored with baby games. Dinner's ready, Sarah announced, setting 2 plates on her small table. She'd already fed Lily, who was now happily occupied with her blocks. James joined her at the table, waiting until she was seated before sitting down himself. It was a small courtesy, but one that Sarah noticed and appreciated. This looks wonderful, he said, twirling pasta onto his fork. Thank you for cooking. It's the least I could do after everything you've done for us, Sarah replied. James took a bite and made an appreciative sound. This is delicious. Sarah smiled, pleased by his enjoyment. My grandmother's recipe. She taught me to cook when I was little. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, with Sarah occasionally glancing over to check on Lily, who was contentedly playing with her toys in the living room just a few feet away. Sarah, James said after a while, setting down his fork, I wanted to talk to you about something. Something in his tone made Sarah tense. What is it? I've been thinking about your nursing education, he began carefully. You mentioned it's taking a long time because you can only afford one class at a time. Sarah nodded warily. That's right. I'd like to help with that, James said. I've set up a scholarship fund through my foundation. It's designed for single parents pursuing healthcare careers. Sarah's fork clattered against her plate. You created a scholarship, for me? Not just for you, James clarified quickly. For people like you, dedicated parents who are working hard to build a better future for themselves and their children. But yes, you were my inspiration. Sarah didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to refuse immediately, her pride balking at accepting more charity. But another part recognized the opportunity this represented. With financial support, she could take more classes, finish her degree sooner, and start earning a nurse's salary years earlier than she'd planned. I don't know what to say, she finally managed. Say you'll apply, James replied. The scholarship is legitimate, it will be administered by an independent committee. I won't have any direct say in who gets selected. But you created it because of me, Sarah pointed out. Won't that influence the committee? James shook his head. The committee won't know that. And the scholarship will have specific eligibility requirements. If you meet them, which I believe you do, you'll be considered fairly alongside other applicants. Sarah looked over at Lily, who had abandoned her blocks and was now chewing contentedly on a teething ring. Every decision she made was for that little girl. Every struggle, every sacrifice, all to give Lily opportunities Sarah herself had never had. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly, turning back to James. James was silent for a moment, considering his words carefully. I told you before that you reminded me of what matters. That hasn't changed. I have resources that can make a difference in people's lives. Why wouldn't I use them? But creating an entire scholarship fund? That's a lot, James. He shrugged. To you maybe. To me it's a rounding error in my company's charitable giving budget. And it will help dozens of people over the years, not just you. Put that way it made sense. Still, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it. Is this because, do you feel sorry for me? She asked, hating how small her voice sounded. James's expression softened. No, Sarah. I admire you. There's a big difference. Their eyes met across the table, and Sarah felt something shift between them, a moment of pure understanding that took her breath away. Lily chose that moment to start fussing, breaking the tension. Sarah rose automatically to check on her daughter, finding she needed a diaper change. Excuse me, she said, lifting Lily and carrying her to the bedroom that they shared. When she returned a few minutes later, James was washing the dishes. You don't have to do that, she protested. I know, he replied simply, continuing to rinse the plates. But I want to. Sarah placed Lily in her playpen with some toys and joined James at the sink, picking up a dish towel to dry. About the scholarship, she said finally. I'll think about it. James nodded, handing her a clean plate. That's all I ask. They finished the dishes in companionable silence, then moved to the living room where Lily was beginning to yawn. It's past her bedtime, Sarah explained, lifting her daughter from the playpen. I should put her down. James nodded. I should probably head out anyway. Early meeting tomorrow. Thank you for coming, Sarah said, suddenly shy. And for everything. Thank you for dinner, James replied, his warm brown eyes crinkling at the corners. It was wonderful. He leaned down and gently touched Lily's head. Good night, little one. Sweet dreams. Lily gave him a sleepy smile, then nestled against her mother's shoulder. Sarah walked James to the door, balancing Lily on her hip. At the threshold, James paused. The scholarship application will be available next week, he said. No pressure, but I hope you'll consider it. I will, Sarah promised, and she meant it. After he left, Sarah went through Lily's bedtime routine on autopilot, her mind still processing the evening. As she laid her now sleeping daughter in the crib, she allowed herself to imagine a different future, one where she didn't have to work nights cleaning hospital rooms, where she could afford a bigger apartment in a better neighborhood, where she could buy Lily new clothes instead of second-hand ones. A future where she was Nurse Sarah, respected and well-paid. It was a beautiful dream. And for the first time, it felt like it might actually be possible. 2 months later, Sarah's life had transformed in ways she could never have imagined. She had applied for and received the Parker Foundation Scholarship for Healthcare Excellence, which not only covered her tuition but also provided a stipend that allowed her to reduce her work hours and take more classes. She was now on track to finish her nursing degree in 18 months instead of 4 more years. James had become a regular presence in their lives, stopping by at least once a week to check on them and play with Lily. He brought small, thoughtful gifts, educational toys for Lily, a better laptop for Sarah's classes, a comfortable reading chair for the living room. Each gift was carefully chosen to be useful rather than flashy, respecting Sarah's pride while still making their lives easier. Today, Sarah was studying at the library while James watched Lily at her apartment. It was an arrangement that had evolved naturally as they'd grown to trust each other. James seemed to genuinely enjoy his Lily time, as he called it, and Sarah benefited from uninterrupted study hours. But as she packed up her books to head home, Sarah felt a familiar knot of anxiety in her stomach. Their friendship had remained just that, a friendship, but lately she'd noticed a shift. The way James looked at her sometimes when he thought she wasn't watching. The way her own heart raced when he arrived and sank when he left. She was falling for him. And that terrified her. James Parker lived in a world so far removed from hers that it might as well be another planet. He attended galas and board meetings and traveled the world on business. She cleaned hospital rooms and changed diapers and clipped coupons to save on groceries. Even with the scholarship, the gulf between them was enormous. And then there was the matter of gratitude. How could she separate her growing feelings from her appreciation for all he'd done? How could she be sure that what she felt was real and not just thankfulness mixed with admiration? The bus ride home gave her too much time to think, to worry, to second-guess herself. By the time she reached her stop, Sarah had resolved to maintain careful boundaries. James had promised friendship, and friendship was what she would give him, nothing more, nothing less. She opened her apartment door to find James sitting on the floor, reading a picture book to Lily. Her daughter was curled in his lap, utterly content, occasionally patting the colorful pages with her small hands. The sight made Sarah's heart contract painfully. And the caterpillar was still hungry, James read in an animated voice, completely absorbed in the story. He hadn't even noticed Sarah's arrival. So he ate through one slice of salami, James continued, turning the page carefully. Sarah stood quietly in the doorway, unwilling to break the spell of the moment. Watching James with Lily felt so right, so natural that it scared her. "We're home," she finally said, setting her backpack down. James looked up, his face breaking into a warm smile. "Hey, how was studying?" "Productive," Sarah replied, hanging up her coat. "How was Lily?" "Perfect as always," James said, closing the book as Lily scrambled off his lap and toddled toward her mother. "We played, had lunch, and now we're catching up on our literature." Sarah scooped up her daughter, breathing in her baby powder scent. "Thank you for watching her." "Anytime," James said, rising from the floor with a slight grimace. "Though I'm discovering muscles I didn't know I had. Turns out chasing a toddler is better than any gym workout." Sarah laughed. "Try doing it every day." "I wouldn't mind that," James said quietly. The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning that Sarah wasn't ready to acknowledge. "I should get dinner started," she said quickly, carrying Lily to the kitchen. "Actually," James said, following her, "I wanted to talk to you about something." Sarah's heart stuttered. "Oh. My sister's wedding is next weekend," he said. "I was hoping you and Lily might come with me." Sarah nearly dropped the sippy cup she was filling. "Your sister's wedding? James, that's a family event." "Exactly," he said, leaning against the counter. "And I'd like you to meet my family." Sarah set the cup down carefully. "Why?" James ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as a sign of nervousness. "Because you and Lily are important to me. And I think my family would love you both." "As friends?" Sarah clarified, needing to hear him say it. James hesitated. "Sarah, I think we both know it's become more than that. At least for me." There it was, the word she'd both longed for and dreaded. "James," she began, but he held up a hand. "You don't have to say anything now. Just think about coming to the wedding. No pressure, I promise." Before Sarah could respond, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen. Memorial Hospital. Probably calling to see if she could cover a shift. "I should take this," she said. James nodded. "I'll get going. Just think about it, okay?" After he left, Sarah collapsed onto the couch, her mind swirling. The wedding invitation wasn't just about a social event, it was about taking their relationship public, introducing her to his world. It was a step she wasn't sure she was ready to take. Her phone buzzed with a text from James. "No pressure about the wedding. But if you do come, there's a special surprise I think you'll like." Sarah stared at the message, wondering what surprise James could possibly have planned, and whether she was brave enough to find out. The ballroom of the Grand Plaza Hotel glittered with thousands of tiny lights, transforming the space into a winter wonderland for the April wedding. Sarah stood just inside the entrance, Lily balanced on her hip, feeling terribly out of place despite the new dress James had insisted on buying her. "You came," James said, appearing beside her with 2 flutes of champagne. He looked devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo, his dark hair neatly combed, his smile radiant. "I almost didn't," Sarah admitted, accepting a glass with her free hand. "I'm glad you did," James replied, gently touching Lily's cheek. The little girl was dressed in a puffy pink dress with tiny flowers, her dark curls held back by a matching headband. "You both look beautiful." Sarah flushed. After much internal debate, she had accepted James's offer to help with outfits for the wedding. The midnight blue gown she wore was more elegant than anything she'd ever owned, the material soft and flowing around her. "Your family is going to think I'm your charity case," she murmured, taking a small sip of champagne. James frowned. "No, they won't. They know how much you mean to me." Before Sarah could respond, a striking woman in her 60s approached them, her silver hair elegantly styled, her posture regal. "James, darling, is this the Sarah I've heard so much about?" she asked, her gaze warm as it took in Sarah and Lily. "Mom, this is Sarah Johnson and her daughter Lily," James said, his voice filled with unmistakable pride. "Sarah, this is my mother, Eleanor Parker." "It's lovely to meet you, Mrs. Parker," Sarah said, suddenly aware of her cheap manicure and drugstore makeup. "Please call me Eleanor," the older woman insisted, reaching out to touch Lily's hand. "And who is this precious little one?" "This is Lily," Sarah replied, surprised by the genuine warmth in Eleanor's eyes. "She's just turned 1. She's absolutely beautiful," Eleanor said. "She has your eyes." Sarah smiled, relaxing slightly. "Thank you. James has told us so much about both of you," Eleanor continued. "I'm so pleased you could join us today." Before Sarah could respond, a distinguished man appeared at Eleanor's side. "Is this the famous Sarah?" he asked, his voice a deeper version of James's. "Dad, this is Sarah and Lily," James said. "Sarah, my father, Richard Parker." "Welcome to the family circus," Richard said with a wink, shaking Sarah's hand. "Don't let all this intimidate you. We're just regular people who happen to stumble into more money than we know what to do with." Sarah couldn't help but laugh at his candor. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Parker." "Richard, please." "Mr. Parker, makes me look for my grandfather." The easy manner of James's parents began to ease Sarah's anxiety. They chatted for a few minutes before the bride-to-be swept over, resplendent in her wedding gown. "Sarah," she exclaimed as if greeting an old friend. "I'm Catherine, James's sister. I'm so glad you came. James hasn't shut up about you and this little cutie for months." Sarah blinked in surprise. "Months?" Catherine laughed. "Oh yes, ever since you texted him by mistake." It was all Sarah, this and Lily that at every family dinner. Sarah glanced at James, who looked slightly embarrassed. "Exaggerating as usual, Kath," he muttered. "I am not," Catherine protested. "Mom, didn't James talk about Sarah at Christmas?" "He certainly did," Eleanor confirmed with a smile. "And New Year's. And at your engagement party." Sarah felt a rush of conflicting emotions. James had been talking about her to his family all this time? Even before they'd properly met? "Oh, look at the time," James said suddenly. "Catherine, shouldn't you be lining up for the ceremony?" Catherine laughed. "Subtle brother dear. Yes, I should." She turned to Sarah. "Promise you'll save me a dance later? I want to hear all about how you've managed to turn my workaholic brother into a devoted family man." As Catherine swept away, Sarah turned to James with raised eyebrows. "Devoted family man?" James rubbed the back of his neck. "She's being dramatic. It's her wedding day, she's entitled." Richard chuckled. "Actually, she's not far off. We've never seen James like this before." He patted his son on the shoulder. "It's a good look on you, son." As the ceremony began, Sarah found herself seated with James in the front row, Lily contentedly playing with a quiet toy in her lap. The wedding was both elegant and warm, with personal vows that brought tears to Sarah's eyes. During the reception that followed, Sarah was surprised by how easily she was welcomed by James's extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, they all greeted her with genuine interest and kindness. No one treated her as an outsider or seemed concerned about her obvious lack of wealth or status. "I told you they'd love you," James said as they swayed together on the dance floor, Lily having been happily whisked away by Eleanor for some grandmotherly spoiling, as she had put it. "They're not what I expected," Sarah admitted. "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Snobbish? Judgmental?" concerned that their billionaire relative was hanging around with a single mom who cleans hospital rooms. James pulled her closer. My family values character over bank accounts, Sarah. Always have. That's how they raised me. Sarah rested her head against his shoulder, allowing herself to relax into the moment. This is all so surreal, she murmured. Which part? All of it. Being here. Meeting your family. Dancing at a wedding that probably cost more than I'll earn in 10 years. James was quiet for a moment. Does it bother you? The money? Sarah considered the question seriously. Not the money itself, she finally said, but the difference it creates between us. I can't help wondering what someone like you sees in someone like me. James stopped dancing and tilted her chin up to meet his gaze. Someone like you? You mean someone strong, determined, and loving? Someone who works multiple jobs and takes classes and still finds time to read bedtime stories and make homemade baby food? Someone who refuses to give up even when things seem impossible. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. James? The question isn't what I see in you, Sarah. It's whether you can see yourself the way I do. Before she could respond, Eleanor appeared with a sleepy Lily. I think someone's ready for a nap, she said, handing the baby to Sarah. I should take her to the hotel room, Sarah said, grateful for the interruption. James's words had touched something deep inside her, something she wasn't ready to examine too closely. I'll come with you, James offered. No, stay and enjoy your sister's wedding, Sarah insisted. We'll be fine. Eleanor touched her arm. Sarah, before you go, I wanted to tell you something. In all the years since James founded his company, I've never seen him as happy as he's been these past few months. Whatever you and that precious little girl are doing, please don't stop. Sarah didn't know how to respond to such a heartfelt statement. Thank you, she managed. As she carried Lily toward the exit, James caught up with them. Wait, he said. I wanted to give you the surprise I mentioned. Sarah turned. Now, James confirmed, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small blue envelope and handed it to her. Open it when you get to the room. Sarah tucked the envelope into her clutch. Okay. James bent to kiss Lily's forehead, then hesitated before gently pressing his lips to Sarah's cheek. I'll check on you both later, he promised. In the elegant hotel suite that James had arranged for them, Sarah laid Lily in the portable crib and sat on the edge of the king-sized bed. She opened the blue envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a certificate of admission to the university's accelerated nursing program, starting in the fall semester. With it was a letter confirming that all expenses would be covered by the Parker Foundation, including a living stipend that would allow Sarah to quit her cleaning job and focus fully on her studies. The second page was a handwritten note from James. Sarah, I know you're worried about taking help from me. I understand your pride and respect it. But this isn't charity, it's investment in a brilliant future nurse who will help countless patients throughout her career. You earned this with your grades and determination. All I did was make it possible for you to accept it without worrying about Lily or bills. There are no strings attached. This is yours whether our relationship grows or remains exactly as it is now. All I ask is that you give yourself this chance. You deserve it, James. Sarah read the note 3 times, tears streaming down her face. The accelerated program had been her dream, but she'd never even applied, knowing she couldn't afford to stop working. Somehow, James had made it happen anyway. And he'd done it in a way that preserved her dignity. This wasn't a handout, it was a vote of confidence in her abilities and her future. As Lily slept peacefully in her crib, Sarah made a decision. She was done being afraid of what might happen between her and James. She was done letting her past dictate her future. She was done pretending that her feelings for him were simply friendship or gratitude. When James knocked softly on the door an hour later, Sarah was waiting. Is everything okay? He asked, noticing her tear-stained cheeks. Sarah nodded, stepping aside to let him in. Lily's still sleeping, she whispered. James glanced at the open envelope on the bed. You opened it. I did. And? Sarah took a deep breath. And I've been thinking about what you said earlier. About seeing myself the way you see me. James waited, his expression hopeful yet guarded. I'm not there yet, Sarah admitted. But I want to be. And I think being with you helps me get closer. James took a step toward her. What are you saying, Sarah? She met his gaze steadily. I'm saying that I'm falling in love with you, James Parker. And it terrifies me, but I'm tired of being afraid. The smile that broke across James's face was like sunrise after the longest night. Sarah, he whispered, reaching for her hands. I've been in love with you since you sent me that wrong number text. Sarah laughed through her tears. That's ridiculous. It's true, James insisted. Something inside me just knew. From that very first message. That's not how love works, Sarah protested. Maybe not usually, James agreed. But sometimes, rarely, a connection happens that defies explanation. He squeezed her hands gently. I know it sounds crazy. I thought it was crazy too. But the more I got to know you, the more certain I became. Sarah shook her head in wonder. Of all the wrong numbers in the world. You found mine, James finished, pulling her closer. Or maybe it found you. When their lips finally met, Sarah knew he was right. Some connections did defy explanation. And this one, improbable as it was, felt like coming home. The August heat pressed against the windows of Sarah's new apartment, but inside, the air conditioning kept the space comfortably cool. Lily toddled across the hardwood floors, exploring the unfamiliar rooms with delighted curiosity. What do you think? James asked, setting down the last box from Sarah's old place. Sarah turned slowly, taking in the spacious living room with its tall windows and the open kitchen beyond. The apartment was on the 5th floor of a secure building near the university, with 2 bedrooms, a study, and even a small balcony overlooking a tree-lined street. It's perfect, she said. But are you sure about this? The rent must be. Sarah, James interrupted gently. We've been over this. The scholarship stipend covers housing. This apartment is within that budget. Sarah raised an eyebrow skeptically. Really? Well, James admitted with a small smile, the foundation might have adjusted the housing allowance to reflect current market conditions. But there's nothing unusual about that. Sarah shook her head, but she was smiling. Over the past 4 months, she had learned to accept James's help with more grace, understanding that his generosity came from love, not pity. And she'd learned to trust that he respected her enough to be honest about the limits. In that case, thank you, she said, wrapping her arms around his waist. It's a wonderful place for Lily and me to start our new chapter. James kissed the top of her head. Speaking of new chapters, he said, there's something I've been wanting to talk to you about. Sarah looked up at him. That sounds serious. It is, James agreed. He guided her to the couch, calling to Lily, who immediately ran to climb into his lap. Once they were all settled, he continued. You know, I've been thinking about making some changes at the company. Sarah nodded. James had been discussing his desire to step back from day-to-day operations to focus on research and development, his true passion. Well, I've finally done it, he said. I've named Elena as the new CEO. The board approved it yesterday. Sarah's eyes widened. James, that's huge. How do you feel? Relieved, he admitted. And excited. I'll still be chairman, but now I can focus on innovation instead of quarterly earnings reports and shareholder meetings. I'm so happy for you, Sarah said, squeezing his hand. There's more, James continued. With my new role, I'll have a more flexible schedule. Which means... He paused, suddenly looking nervous. Which means what? Sarah prompted. James took a deep breath. Which means I've been thinking about us. About our future. Sarah's heart began to race. They had been officially dating for 4 months now, though their relationship had been building for much longer. Still, they had been careful to take things slowly, mindful of Lily and the many adjustments in Sarah's life. James, she began, but he shook his head. Let me get this out before I lose my nerve, he said. He shifted Lily to his other knee and reached into his pocket. Sarah Johnson, you and this little munchkin have changed my life in ways I never imagined possible. You've shown me what really matters. You've made me happier than I've ever been. He pulled out a small velvet box and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. I'm not proposing, James said quickly. Not exactly. Not yet. Sarah blinked in confusion. You're not. James opened the box, revealing not an engagement ring but a key. This is a key to my house, he explained. I want you and Lily to move in with me. Not right away, he added hastily. I know you need to start school first, get settled. But whenever you're ready. James, Sarah whispered, overwhelmed. I want us to be a family, he continued, words tumbling out now. I want to wake up with you every morning and help Lily learn to swim in the pool and plant a garden together and everything, Sarah. I want everything with you. Lily, sensing the emotional moment, patted James's face with her small hand. Dada? She said questioningly. The room went still. It was the first time Lily had ever called James that. Sarah looked at her daughter in surprise. Lily, what did you say? Dada, Lily repeated more confidently, pointing at James's face. James's eyes filled with tears. Sarah, She's never said that before, Sarah explained, her own eyes welling up. She's never called anyone that. James swallowed hard. Is it okay? Sarah considered the question seriously. Lily's biological father had never so much as met her, let alone loved her. James, on the other hand, had been a constant, loving presence in her life for months now. Yes, she decided. It's more than okay. It's right. James pressed a kiss to Lily's curls, his expression a mix of joy and wonder. Then he turned back to Sarah. So what do you think? About moving in together? Sarah looked at the key, then at James and Lily together on the couch. The image fulfilled a dream she'd never dared to have, a true family, built on love and trust and mutual respect. I think, she said slowly, that I'd like to finish my first semester before making any big changes. But after that, yes, James. I want us to be a family too. James's face broke into a radiant smile. Really? Really? Sarah confirmed. But I have one condition. Anything, James promised. When the time comes for you to properly propose, Sarah said, taking the key from the box. No big public gestures, okay? Just us. Just family. James nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. Just us, he agreed. Always. 6 months later, Sarah sat in the garden of James's now their home, watching as Lily chased butterflies across the winter-brown lawn. Despite the chilly February air, the sun was warm enough for a brief outdoor playtime, and Lily never missed an opportunity to explore. The past months had been a whirlwind of changes. Sarah had completed her first semester of nursing school with straight A's, an achievement that had made her burst with pride. She and Lily had moved into James's house just before Christmas, transforming the elegant but somewhat sterile mansion into a real home filled with laughter and toys and the occasional spilled juice. James had taken to fatherhood with an enthusiasm that touched Sarah deeply. He built a swing set in the backyard, read bedtime stories with different voices for each character, and never complained when Lily's toys migrated from her playroom into his home office. They were happy. Truly deeply happy. And yet, something had been bothering Sarah lately, a feeling that there was still a piece of their story she didn't understand. Penny for your thoughts, James said, settling beside her on the garden bench. He handed her a mug of hot chocolate, keeping one for himself. Sarah accepted the drink gratefully. I've been thinking about the day we met. Which day? James asked with a smile. The text message, the coffee shop, or the night you nearly pepper-sprayed me when I surprised you with dinner? Sarah laughed. I did not nearly pepper-spray you. And it's not my fault you didn't warn me you were coming over. I wanted it to be a surprise, James protested. How was I to know you keep mace in your purse? Single mom in the city, Sarah reminded him. But actually, I was thinking about the text message. James sipped his hot chocolate. What about it? Sarah hesitated. Something Catherine said at the wedding has been bothering me. She mentioned that you talked about me at Christmas, but we hadn't even met in person then. James suddenly became very interested in watching Lily chase a particularly elusive butterfly. James, Sarah pressed. What aren't you telling me? He sighed, setting his mug down on the bench between them. I knew who you were, he admitted quietly. Before you texted me. Sarah stared at him. What do you mean? James ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she now recognized as a sign of nervousness. Remember how I told you that I funded a research lab at Memorial Hospital? Sarah nodded slowly. Well, last October I was there for a tour of the new facility. It was late after hours. You were cleaning one of the labs. Recognition dawned on Sarah's face. I remember that night. A group of men in suits came through. I had to wait in the hallway while they inspected the lab I was supposed to clean. James nodded. That was us. While we were in there you got a phone call. I couldn't help overhearing. You were talking to your babysitter, explaining that you'd be late because you'd picked up an extra shift. Sarah remembered the call. Her regular sitter had been threatening to quit because Sarah was consistently late due to her erratic work schedule. You were so apologetic, James continued. And you promised to bring formula when you got home. Then when we finally left the lab, you were still in the hallway, looking so tired but immediately getting back to work. He shook his head. I couldn't stop thinking about you. Sarah frowned. So when I texted you, I recognized your name, James admitted. And I took the opportunity to help without revealing that I'd been, well, thinking about you for months. That's... Sarah struggled to find the right word. Creepy? Stalkerish? I prefer fateful, James suggested with a wry smile. Or maybe meant to be? Despite herself, Sarah laughed. You should have told me. I know, James agreed. I was going to that first day at the cafe. But then I saw you sitting there, looking so wary and protective of Lily, and I couldn't figure out how to say, by the way, I've been thinking about you since I saw you cleaning a lab 3 months ago, without sounding like a complete stalker. Sarah shook her head in wonder. So that whole time you knew exactly who I was? Not exactly, James corrected. I knew your first name and where you worked. That's all. Everything else, everything important, I learned the right way by getting to know you. Sarah considered this revelation. It was strange, certainly, and a little unsettling. But it also explained the immediate connection she'd felt with James, the sense that he understood her situation more deeply than he should have. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, James said, taking her hand. I was afraid you'd run away if you knew. I might have, Sarah admitted. Back then, I would have assumed the worst about your intentions. And now? James asked. Sarah looked at him, this kind, brilliant man who had changed her life in so many ways. Now I know your heart. And I know you wouldn't have helped me out of pity or for any unseemly reasons. Never, James agreed fervently. From the moment I saw you, exhausted but still working so hard, all I wanted was to make your life a little easier. To give you the breaks you deserved but weren't getting. Lily ran over to them, her cheeks pink from the cold and exertion. Mommy? Daddy? I saw a yellow butterfly. In February? Sarah asked, surprised. It was yellow and black, Lily insisted, climbing onto James's lap. And it was beautiful. I believe you, sweet pea, James said, wrapping his arms around her. Sometimes wonderful things appear when you least expect them. He met Sarah's eyes over Lily's head, and she knew he wasn't just talking about butterflies. I have something for you, James said suddenly, reaching into his pocket. I've been waiting for the right moment, but maybe that moment is now. Sarah's breath caught as he pulled out a small velvet box, a different one than the key had come in, smaller and clearly meant for jewelry. James? She whispered. I was going to wait until our anniversary, he explained, but after our conversation I think now is perfect. He opened the box, revealing a stunning yet simple diamond ring. Because now you know the whole truth. How you came into my life twice, once when I saw you at the hospital and again when you texted me. How from the very beginning, I knew you were someone special. Ooh, pretty, Lily commented, reaching for the sparkling ring. James gently redirected her hand. It is pretty, isn't it? It's for your mommy if she'll accept it. He turned to Sarah, his expression vulnerable in a way she rarely saw. Sarah Johnson, I've loved you from afar and up close. I've loved watching you grow into your strength and confidence. I've loved being Lily's daddy and your partner. Will you make me the happiest man alive and marry me? Sarah felt tears well in her eyes. Yes, she said simply. Yes, of course I will. As James slipped the ring onto her finger, Lily clapped her hands in delight. Mommy and Daddy getting married. That's right, sweet pea, James said, his voice thick with emotion. We're going to be a forever family. Sarah leaned forward to kiss him, her heart overflowing with love for this man who had entered her life through a wrong number that turned out to be exactly right. 1 year later, Sarah stood in a small dressing room at the Memorial Hospital chapel, adjusting her simple white dress. Today was her wedding day, a day she had once thought would never come. A soft knock on the door was followed by Elena's voice. 5 minutes, Sarah. Are you ready? Almost, Sarah called back. After James had proposed, they had discussed various wedding options from grand affairs at luxury resorts to intimate ceremonies in exotic locations. In the end, they had chosen the hospital chapel, wanting to celebrate their union in the place where their story had truly begun. Most of the guests were already seated, a small group consisting of James's family, Sarah's colleagues from nursing school, and a few close friends. The ceremony would be brief and meaningful, followed by a reception in the hospital's newly renovated garden, which the Parker Foundation had funded. Sarah took a deep breath, checking her reflection one last time. The woman who looked back at her was changed from the desperate mother who had sent that wrong number text nearly 2 years ago. Her eyes held confidence now, along with happiness. Her posture was straight, unburdened by the weight of constant worry. She was different, yes. But the core of who she was remained the same, a mother who would do anything for her child, a woman determined to build a better future through her own hard work and determination. Another knock, and this time the door opened to reveal Lily, resplendent in her flower girl dress, a basket of rose petals clutched in her small hands. Mommy, you look like a princess, Lily declared, eyes wide. Sarah knelt to her daughter's level. And you look like a little fairy. Are you ready for your big job? Lily nodded solemnly. I practice with Daddy. I throw the flowers and walk slow. That's right, sweetheart. Sarah smoothed a dark curl back from Lily's forehead, marveling at how much her daughter had grown. At nearly 3, Lily was a confident, curious child who loved books and butterflies and her daddy James with equal passion. The door opened wider and Eleanor appeared, elegant in a pale blue dress. "It's time, dear," she said softly. Sarah stood, smoothing her dress with suddenly trembling hands. "I'm ready." Eleanor surprised her with a warm hug. "You've brought such joy to my son," she whispered. "Thank you for that gift." Sarah blinked back tears. "He's brought joy to us too." Together they walked to the chapel entrance, where Richard waited to escort Sarah down the aisle. They had asked him to do the honors, since Sarah's own father had been absent from her life since childhood. "You look beautiful," Richard said, offering his arm. The music began and Lily started her procession, carefully dropping rose petals as she'd practiced. A ripple of affectionate laughter followed her progress as she occasionally stopped to rearrange petals that hadn't fallen in patterns she approved of. When Lily reached the altar, where James waited in a simple black suit, she abandoned her flower girl duties to hug his legs. "Hi, Daddy," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. James bent to kiss the top of her head, then gently directed her to stand beside Catherine, who was serving as maid of honor. Then it was Sarah's turn. As she walked down the aisle on Richard's arm, her eyes locked with James's. The love she saw there was so pure, so unconditional, that it took her breath away. When she reached the altar, Richard placed her hand in James's, then stepped back to join Eleanor in the front row. "Hi," James whispered, his eyes never leaving hers. "Hi yourself," Sarah whispered back. The chaplain began the ceremony, but Sarah hardly heard the words. She was too caught up in the miracle of the moment, in the incredible journey that had brought her from that desperate night without electricity to this day filled with light and love. When it came time for their vows, James went first, his voice steady and sure. "Sarah, when you texted me that night asking for help, you thought it was a mistake. I knew better. It was the universe bringing together two people who needed each other in ways neither of us understood yet. You've taught me what really matters in life. You've shown me that true wealth has nothing to do with money and everything to do with love. I promise to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the gift you've given me, the gift of you and Lily and our family." Sarah blinked back tears as she began her own vows. "James, I spent so long believing that I had to do everything alone. That asking for help was a weakness. That I couldn't trust anyone but myself. You changed that. Not by throwing money at my problems, though that help was appreciated," she added with a small smile, earning a chuckle from the guests. "But by showing me what real partnership looks like. By respecting my pride while gently teaching me that it's okay to lean on someone who loves you. I promise to keep building our life together, to raise our daughter with love and kindness, and to never forget that sometimes, the wrong number turns out to be exactly the right one." They exchanged rings, simple platinum bands that matched the elegant simplicity of Sarah's engagement ring. And when the chaplain pronounced them husband and wife, James pulled Sarah into a kiss that promised a lifetime of love and partnership. At the reception afterward, as James twirled Lily around the dance floor while Sarah chatted with her former supervisor Thomas, who had been delighted to learn he'd played an unwitting role in their love story, Sarah felt a sense of completion she'd never experienced before. Her journey wasn't over. In fact, in many ways, it was just beginning. She would graduate from nursing school in a few months. She and James were discussing having another child. Lily was growing and changing every day. But the desperate uncertainty that had marked so much of her life was gone, replaced by a quiet confidence in the future. Later, as she and James shared their first dance as husband and wife, he leaned down to whisper in her ear. "Happy, Mrs. Parker?" Sarah smiled up at him. "Very happy, Mr. Parker." "And grateful." "For what?" James asked, guiding her in a gentle turn. "For wrong numbers. For second chances. For you." James pulled her closer. "I was thinking we should frame that text message. Put it somewhere in our home to remember how it all began." Sarah laughed. "You still have it?" "Of course I do. I saved every message between us. From that very first desperate plea to Thomas, to the moment you agreed to meet me for coffee." "You big softy," Sarah teased, but her eyes were tender. As they danced, Sarah caught sight of Lily, now fast asleep in Eleanor's lap. Her daughter's face was peaceful, secure in the knowledge that she was loved and protected. It was all Sarah had ever wanted for her. That night, after they'd put Lily to bed in their hotel suite and were finally alone, James wrapped his arms around Sarah from behind as they stood on the balcony overlooking the city lights. "Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if you dialed the right number that night?" he asked quietly. Sarah turned in his arms to face him. Sometimes, Thomas would have loaned me the money for formula, I'm sure. But I'd still be cleaning rooms at night, taking one class at a time, struggling to make ends meet. And I'd still be that lonely man in the penthouse, surrounded by wealth but missing what really matters, James added. Sarah reached up to touch his face. I think the universe knew what it was doing when it crossed our wires. Best wrong number ever, James murmured, bending to kiss her. As their lips met, Sarah silently thanked whatever twist of fate had caused her finger to hit the wrong digit that desperate night. One small mistake had led to this perfect moment, to a life filled with love, security, and promise. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was better. It was real. And it all began with a text message sent to the wrong number that turned out to be exactly the right one.